So this is not a polished presentation or anything. It's just a quick walkthrough through our platform that we've been building. Yeah, so Formulaic, how I like to describe it, is a Gen AI platform that focuses on simplicity and getting things done. So you can think an analog is like Django is a batteries included approach for web servers, whereas Flask is, a lot less hand-holding, and we're more on the Flask lines, if you will, just to, maybe that helps someone in the room, I don't know. Yeah, so let's get started. So like I said, this is live. This is, right now, you can go right now, it's open to the public, formulaic.app, anyone can sign up and get inference and start hacking. Before we jump into the actual demo, I just wanted to highlight that Formulaic actually works with local LLMs as well. So you can see this one is a walkthrough for using Formulaic with LlamaFile, which is another amazing open source project by Mozilla. Check it out if you haven't. It lets you run models locally on your own device without using cloud services. OK, cool. So yeah, this is the, you can see I prepared a little bit of this just to help with the demo here. But again, this is all live. And I'm going to walk you through the dashboard experience if my mouse decides to work. Oh, there we go. It's functioning. Cool. Yeah, so this is a little bit of an editor that we've created to help do some more complicated things with LLMs, but simplify it with a GUI so that anyone, non-developers, anyone non-technical can actually interact with these LLMs on the fly and then collaborate with others. So that's a big one as well. You can see that in this example, I'm just going to do a classification kind of prompt chain. Where I'm going to write this prompt that you can see right here. I'm going to fill in using some variables, and we'll see how those variables interact later on with the API that we have. And then I'm going to do prompt chaining, which is just coupling a bunch of different prompts together to help split out some of the domain logic into different places. Helps the LLMs get more consistent, we find anyway. On the left, you can see me actually define the variables themselves. And then one cool part, or specifically cool, is the instant rag. Wow, my scroll does not work today. But essentially, you can just click and drag or drop and drag any text file or CSV, or PDF, all those good things, and get instantaneous rag embedded with your formula. So enough talking, I guess. We can just run this if my internet works. Oh, actually, yeah. We support up to 3 models running simultaneously for inference at once, so you can actually get up to 3 results at the same time, which we find is helpful for vibe checking. But also, you'll see later on with the API that you can actually use multiple models' responses and compare them against each other and pick the best one, which is kind of a cool, nice to have. Actually, I won't run it because I'm running hot on a hotspot here. I'll just show you what I already computed. Again, my mouse does not want to work. Cool. Anyway, yeah. This is a pretty small screen, so it's kind of hard to see, but we can assume I ran this, not pre, but live. And you can see that we got 3 responses from 3 different models, and they're not related, right? So we have Gemini, shout out to Google here in the house, but we also have GPT-4o Mini and Llama 3.1 8B. And what's cool is that you can now actually see that all the 3 models kind of gave up a similar result, and they were in agreement in this particular classification. So that's kind of cool. So now you can actually get 3 different classifications from 3 different models and compare them and see which one's the best, or if there's an agreement with them. So that's one way to help with consistency. But you can actually see there's a little bit tricky here, is that the first 2 models actually provided JSON, which is what the request of the second prompt was, but in Markdown. Whereas the last model, for example, the Llama 3.1, just provided the raw JSON. So you can kind of see how these different models interpret prompts differently, and it's not always obvious which model is the best. So in this case, it's the open model, the smallest model by far, that returned the best response. And that's not always going to be consistent, but it's just a cool thing that sometimes people forget, which is, hey, open small models are great too. Yeah, so that's honestly the meat of it all, but we can quickly go into some features specific to Formulaic. So we like to look at things and log things, so that's another thing that we can do. We can actually see the history of our runs of the formula, and over time you can compare this when it's actually in a production environment. You can actually see the log of LLM inference. It's good for auditing, good for checking things as well. And like I said before, you can create these formulas and then share them over the internet and empower anyone with instant rag agents, if you will. So I can share this with you, and you can start chatting with it and seeing if you can get better prompts with it, tweaking it, and it's already pre-baked. Everything's already there, and so is the file itself. So you get RAG for free, and you can share it across the teams or people you want to work with. All right, so enough talking about API, the front end. Let's talk about APIs. So can we see this okay? Let's see. Yeah, let's zoom in a little bit. Yeah, okay, cool. So this is the Formulaic node library that we've been building, but like I said, I don't know if I said actually, we've been using REST APIs in the backend, so you can use this. It's programming language agnostic, but we provide a nice Formulaic node library just to help get things done. But it's pretty typical, like any other API you've probably seen, like OpenAI or others, where you just get an API key, and like we're going to recreate that formula I did on the front end, but this time in code. And we're going to actually make use of those variables. So this is a gist, by the way, on my GitHub. It's also open to the public. We have a bunch of other walkthroughs and documentation. This is just a simple one that I put together today. But yeah, so we're going to create this sentence classifier that we talked about before. We have the variables, and we define those as well as a type. And we're going to select a model that we want to default to, and then we're going to fill in the prompts like we did on the front end. Thereafter, we're going to create the formula. We're going to get a response back with the ID. And then this is where it's kind of cool. Programmatically, we can upload and get instantaneous reg in our API right off the gate. Again, zero code required. Just pass in the path to the file, and we handle all the vector database stuff on the back end. Cool. You can also see all the models that we have available at the moment. Those are always constantly being updated on the fly, so it's always good to check those out. And in our case, we're going to provide some sample sentences for classification. We're just passing a list in this case, but you can imagine there's a CSV you want to process or some other process like a REST API that you're handling. And we're going to dynamically set those variables. And then we're going to call the Formulaic create completion. And lo and behold, you're going to get a response that looks just like this. We're going to get what you saw on the front end, but in your code. And then you can do things like validation, and then, like I said, those multi-model compare, where you just check if the responses are the same across 3 different models. So that's like the super high-level whirlwind demo I just wanted to show today. Thanks for squeezing me in, by the way, Cyrus. It's awesome. Yeah, that's my demo.
All right, any more chance?
Are the models hosted by you guys, or are they local? How does that work? I'm going to that model function. Sure.
Yeah, so we kind of do both. It's up to you. So we provide a bunch of models that we host ourselves or through partner organizations. So like Gemini, for example, you can't run locally, neither with GPT-4o. But when you get some of the benefits from Formulaic and run locally as well using Llama-File or other like Ollama as well using their APIs. It's a little bit less featureful, if you will, when you do that. Obviously, you have to run that locally on your own device. But we provide some tools and helpful methods to kind of glue together that experience.
Great demo. How realistic do you think the sort of end-user, non-programmer usage is? And if you have like a bunch of people experience with that, how's it going?
Yeah, great question. And that's where it's kind of interesting, right? We kind of didn't want to pick like a lane, like, oh, this is a developer tool only, or this is just like a prosumer person only. Like we tried to make this as general as possible, but still useful. And in our experience, at least with the people that we've seen use it, it's actually quite easy. So once they see a quick demo, they're like, oh, I can make this an agent about company policies or some random Wikipedia article, and then, oh, that resume thing. Or so like once they see that demo and they like drag and drop that file over and run a few times, it's like, oh wow, okay, now I get it. So it's been pretty cool to see that like gotcha moment, like this is cool technology that anyone can use. So yeah, it just took a little bit more like direct communication, if you will.
For your presentation, it's actually a question regarding the how do you force models to classify? Especially, I'm thinking about the situation when randomly you've got something that is not like a classification problem. Class that hasn't been seen or you ask for it. So do you have any filter to do some processing on the results, or just ask the model samples once again, or what was your strategy?
Do you mind just repeating that a little bit? Like I couldn't quite hear you.
Okay, actually I'm wondering about your models of its classification as far as I understood. So imagine a scenario, your models end up with something, it's out of your classes, your defined classes, or some random text. Do you have any filterized stuff processes that can validate your prompts output? Imagine you only have two classes, yes or no, and your model says unknown, and something like this. So how do you classify them? Do you ask the model to do the classification once again, or it's just some other process?
Yeah, great question. So if it's how I understand it is like, do we provide a capacity to like judge a response almost, like yes, no, recompute if not, that kind of thing. And we don't do it quite like that. Like obviously in code, like that's what we kind of want people to do is take this as like the foundation and build on top of it. It's pretty straightforward to validate a response and then just in a if condition kind of thing where you just throw it back to the LLM. And that's what we kind of expect most users would do. But it is a pretty interesting feature and something we had considered in the past where you provide examples of good results and then you can kind of get like an extra loop of inference on those to compare the result that they generated versus the examples. But we found that it was quite complicated for most people to grasp, at least relatively quickly. Like so it was a little bit too broad of a solution, so we didn't really implement it.
Thank you for the demo. Just curious, in your demo you had mentioned flat files and PDFs. Would it also work, say, if you were to upload an audio file or a video file?
So at the moment, we're focusing strictly on text in, text out kind of media. We find that it's like just the simplest and it's fast compute and not too much latency. So we've been focusing on that, but we kind of built it out so that inevitably when multi-model becomes really common, like these multimodal models, become really common, we could kind of add that in on the fly. But yeah, right now mostly just text. Yep.
You mentioned that you're handling all of the rank vectorization in the backend. Can you expand a bit on the parameters around that? Is it possible to customize it, like the chunk size, the meta description, the retrieval questions?
Yeah, for sure. Great question. Yeah, so we don't expose any of the config just yet. It's something we're actively thinking about doing, which is like just providing way more parameters and config to the end user. Again, it was just a balance of like getting it done and getting it done like easily. So we figured like there's like something there. But at the moment, we're using a PG Vector, which is a vector store extension from pSQL. I see a lot of head nodding, so that's awesome, which is fantastic. It keeps everything really simple for us because we use Postgres for our main database anyway. And in terms of like chunking, we handle like a ton of random, very disparate use cases. So we can't really use like heuristics like, oh, process the JSON by this attribute and blah, 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 chunk like this. So we try to keep things super simple. So we have like a couple of heuristics we threw in there, like, I don't know, 1,500 character chunks, and I'd have to look in the code actually, that I forget. But stuff like that where we keep it really simple. And we've actually found great success. Like it's crazy how many people have come to us and been like, there's way less hallucinations now. Or like compared to ChatGPT, I get way better results. And it's just like, it's amazing to see that. But yeah, inevitably it'd be awesome for us to expose a lot of that to the end user and they can really fine tune those parameters. Cool. Thanks a lot for the questions.